Thanks very much, David, and good afternoon or good morning to everybody who's taking the time to listen in. Next slide, please. There's our disclaimer. We've been operating in northwest Queensland for approximately 3 years now. We're in a joint venture with Glencore, and in one part of that, which we'll come to, we're actually earning back into the permit, which you see just up near Cloncurry. We're very excited about that particular target, but we've also got another one over in North Isa, and you can see it to the left, the top of the screen, the northwest there. We're going to be doing work at Tulloch this year, and maybe a little bit more at Lady Agnes, which we drilled a couple of years back. We're happy to be in the area just to endorse what Ian and Damo were just saying. It's a great area to work and play in. We're based in Cloncurry. It's a fab place to live, good people, excellent stakeholders. We've had no issues there. And to talk to Damo's point, I don't want to one-up you on this one, Damo, but we can actually walk to work from our house to the Mongoose deposit and also that prospect that we're about to drill. Next slide, please. Corporately, we just raised some money, including the CEI grant that we picked up. We're sitting at just under $2 million in cash, and we do have some other assets that we've been working on selling, and we're in the room with a couple of parties on that. So we're well funded to go through this. We run this company very tight, effectively. The management team is myself and Ed Fry, the exploration manager. And over the journey, we've borrowed some money. That's going to get paid out. The loan facility has been paid down, and the lendor is actually going to participate in the recent placement by an upcoming general meeting, where they will convert 350 grand of their loan facility into shares. So a good positive note there. It's pretty tight. There's a few shares out nowadays, but it's a pretty tight structure. Next slide, please. So just coming to the players, Mark Connolly is pretty well known around the place, comes from a background of operations, which he tends to deny nowadays, but loves his exploration. But he's a good guy to have on board when it comes to talking turkey around numbers, when it comes to mining and processing and whatnot. Mark Wallace comes out of the markets, and a lot of people probably know him. Ed has a good solid background around exploration, and in particular in this area, which we found attractive when we were trying to get somebody to come on board about a year and a half ago full time, because up until then it was just me and some consultants. Ed and I fundamentally, as I said, are the ones working on the projects and getting our hands dirty and trying to run this thing as tight as a drum, but also get the results. Next slide, please. So the primary focus today is the Mongoose deposit and also the Mongoose Deeps prospect. You can see right there the town of Cloncurry. You can see that in the blue, that's the Carpentaria joint venture ground, which we're earning back into. We're up at around 30% now. We've actually pegged up through the town of Cloncurry, which we own 100%, mainly because all the work that we've done on Mongoose Deeps tells us that the bulk of that deposit sits within that area. Next slide, please. We did drilling last year, so we took over and started earning back into what we call EPM 8588 at the beginning of January. We'd done 2 programs by the end of July. We came out with a resource later in the year. And you can see where Mongoose is, where those drill holes are on the left of the Taipan deposit. It's actually a contiguous deposit to Taipan. So what we've announced there with that 3 million tonnes at just over 0.5% and a bit of gold, it does definitely grow in size when we amalgamate those two deposits. They're one and the same. So we are talking to True North. There's a fair bit of copper through there. And of course, they've got a fully permitted mining lease, and they're looking to bring oxide pads into production, which are just down in the bottom right-hand corner of their permit. So, so basically about a 2 kilometre hole from where Taipan and Mongoose are. Next slide, please. Here's just a slide with a few of the numbers that we got from that drill program, and you can see how interesting it is to us, because basically we drill every hole we drill there, we get copper. We had some lovely results on the way through, the 27 at 2.2, and then some bigger numbers, that 74 up around 0.7. All of this, or a lot of it, is from surface, so it's a very coppery area, and it's always been a bit of a mystery as to where it's come from. Next slide, please. We put this in, this is the Mongoose deposit and the optimised shell, and basically we're just looking at how much copper is running through that system. So this just gives you an idea of what's going on in that particular part of the ground that we control there. Next slide, please. Recently, we've done work at Mongoose West, so we think we're a good chance to extend the Mongoose deposit, heading down there to the west. Some very good grab samples. There's a fair bit of cover down there. What we found at Mongoose was that fundamentally a lot of it sticking out of the ground. There's a 200 to 300 metre long outcropping iron oxide, copper gold, which we were going through and chipping and testing and all the rest of it. So what we found just over here was that there was a fair bit undercover, but we got some very nice signals from our recent ground magnetics. And we're planning possibly towards the end of the Mongoose Deeps hole to kick off up to 2,000 metre RC program over there, looking to extend that resource that starts at the Mongoose. Next slide, please. So talking about the Mongoose Deeps prospect, and you can see the magnetics there in that sort of pinky lavendery colour. It's a very large regional magnetic anomaly. We've done all of the work based on open source material. Sitting above this mag high is copper, as I mentioned before, and you can see we just plot up Mongoose again. Taipan, Great Australia Pit, they've got the Orphan Shear. And what we've actually found is that as we talk to people in town and through town, there's copper all through Cloncurry itself, and it continues to the north. We've actually found copper on our verge. So I was mowing the lawn one day, and I noticed that I was seeing some iron oxide there, so I pulled out the gun and tested it, and it runs at half up to 1.5%. So the copper is all through that region, and the mystery has always been, where did it come from? And we're about to find out based on our own thesis. Next slide, please. And there it is. So we've done an awful lot of work on this. We started back in August, September, working with a very good geophysicist who knows this area intimately. He's worked on Ernest Henry, amongst others, for years. So he came up with this when he did some inversion work on it. He has a very powerful computer, which we're starting to love dearly, and he's come up with this massive magnetic anomaly, which basically starts underneath Mongoose, a little bit heads up towards the shear, and then it plunges to the northwest under the town. So that's where we're heading, and that's why we're getting a bit of excitement, I think, around the stock and what we're up to, because there's some very broad, strong similarities to Ernest Henry. Next slide, please. Gravity results were announced this morning. So we ran a gravity program over this as well, because the regional data was based on 1 kilometre by 1 kilometre. We've done 100s by 100. So forgive that map there, because that's actually very technical. It's kind of hot off the press from our geophysicist and Ed working on it. But basically it's telling us the same message. It's telling us that there's something going on within this system. It's very similar to Ernest Henry, and we're getting an overlap the gravity and the magnetics, which is really what we were looking for, and that's helping us with the sighting of our hole, because it's a deep hole and it's an expensive hole, and we're going to give it the best shot to try and pick something up on the way down in this first crack at it. Next slide, please. This is my favourite slide, because for those of us who can't think in 3D, fundamentally this is showing you that deep plunge, which is coming into that permit to the north where we own 100%. And we've stopped mapping it at about 3 kilometres. And in some parts it's between 500 metres and 1 kilometre wide. So it is massive, and we're looking forward to getting stuck into that shortly. Next slide, please. Another slide for those as just a schematic on how it might work, where we get the breccia pipe with the magnetics and the crackle zone, which is interesting. The only holes drilled, the deepest hole drilled here, I should say, are down to about 200 metres true depth. So nobody's really tested this. In fact, I'm not sure anyone has ever done the work that we have done on it geophysically. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about the money. This diamond hole we budgeted 600. We've already spent the gravity survey and the ground magnetics at Mongoose West. We've got around 1.9 million in cash available, including the CEI grant, which was gratefully received. We put a fair bit of work into that, and we were the recipients, one of 7, I think, that got the 300 grand total. They're wishing us well and urging us on. Next slide, please. Tommy Creek is another permit, part of the CJV, which we haven't commenced earning into yet, but it has what I would have to say a monster graphite prospect. It's in that outline there with that white, the Tommy Creek graphite shift, and you can see through there. We went through, sampled it. Glencore stuck one hole into it, got some really high grade stuff. Needs more work, but it's something that we're paddling along in the background, in particular with our neighbour, who, again, we've got a contiguous ore body there with another party. So we're talking to them about how we might be able to unlock the value. It's also got rare earths and some uranium, and there's some old copper workings, which we haven't got to yet because, frankly, we were out there in November last year. It started pouring with rain. It was about 42 degrees, and I couldn't walk up that last hill. So we were going back there probably when we get some time over the next 4 or 5 months. Next slide, please. This is North Isa, which I touched on, and we're definitely going to do more work there, particularly Tulloch. Tulloch has a lot of zinc showing around. It's got a lot of shows up there, very big, broad shows, which are well above background. So it is interesting. In fact, that whole area is interesting because it's the old Peru fault, now called the Western, and it just forks off from the Mount Isa fault and sort of heads up to the north, where the Isa heads off to the northwest. We're quite fascinated by this because there's been a fair bit of work done on it, but not a lot of holes. So we'd like to do more there, and it's something that we own 75% of. Next slide, please. So we've got to the end of the presentation. I guess there's a fair bit of market interest in us. We've got a very big hole coming our way. We're not a one-trick pony though. We've got the drilling coming at Mongoose West, the other work out at North Isa, plus a fair bit in the background that we want to get stuck into on the other permits. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Rob. As you said, you have seen a fair bit of market interest, and you've clearly got a whole lot of audience interest based on the number of questions that have come through. So we might just jump straight into those, and sorry if some of them seem technical and probably more technical above my pay grade, but we'll get through them as we can. Mongoose Deeps looks like a very big and interesting target, and certainly has the market's attention, which we touched on. Why haven't we seen it before? And will you update the market on hole progress on a hole-by-hole basis?
Yeah, very good question, because we kind of asked ourselves that as well. Why hasn't anyone got hold of this data? I guess we we went out, not to market, but we went out to the guys in the area and asked what geophysicists should we go to reprocess this data, do some inverse work, and try and make sense of these big mag anomalies that we see coming down. It's like a boomerang comes down from Henry down, and it sort of sweeps around underneath the Curry, and we're in the middle of it. And so we picked a guy called David McSweeney, who, as I said, I think he's got a supercomputer down there. I'm not sure if he's doing a bit of Bitcoin mining on the side, but we've been, really excited and happy with the work that he's done and generated. And as I said, he came recommended by a number of other parties, including Glencore, who said that he is your guy to do this work. So why hasn't it done before? I don't know. I mean, if we drill the hole there, and we do get lucky and we hit something pretty decent, then I guess a lot of people will be scratching their heads. But what it will do, it may open up the area again, because we've got these shows all through a couple of our permits there. It's not, this looks quite a little bit unique, but there's lots of others and they need to be drilled.
Does it show the advancement, I suppose, of science and technology, and how applying that to sometimes historical or even recent data makes a massive difference to understanding the mineralogy that you're dealing with? We've seen it a lot in Western Australia, in particular, Fraser Range and other areas where, just changes to technology, changes to research techniques and exploration techniques open up new areas that were seemingly forgotten.
Look, I think so, to a certain extent, and I have to be frank. I over my journey, because I'm not technical, but I've been around it for 30, 40 years. Over my journey, I often glaze over when geophysicists start talking about their colours and their lines and all the rest of it. I think what I've found with Dave is the power of his computer. I think to process something like this, 10 years ago might have taken 2 weeks. He can do it in a day. In fact, for us, he reprocessed Ernest Henry gravity in a day, so we can compare it, right? So it's quite phenomenal, and I think the thing about that power is that he's able to go in and clean up, so he can look at things that got a false read. I can fix that and da. So it doesn't take weeks anymore. If you get somebody like Dave, you can do it very quickly. So a bit of free advertising for Dave if anybody's got something out there, because he's incredibly excited, having done so much work on Ernest Henry over his journey as well.
And when we see the lights dim in Mount Isa, we know that the Renegade information is being reprocessed.
Yeah, well, he's actually in Newcastle, so he's actually in the heart of coal country. But mind you, they've got a problem with their power too there, I believe. But
and in terms of what follows Mongoose Deeps, what's the next part of the plan?
Mongoose West for sure. Try to extend Mongoose deposit. If we can make that bigger, we're trying to work in and help the boys next door at True North to get as many oxides as they can, plus all the sulfides that we see in these holes as well. And that's a nice walk up target for us, which we've fine tuned with the recent mag survey, which I'll be very frank, gave us better data than we expected. We're very encouraged by what we saw, because we couldn't see much at surface, unlike Mongoose itself, and it's only about 300 meters away, but it went undercover. So we're out there digging holes and all the rest of it. But as I said before, I'm getting old. I'm only capable of doing so much of that.
And what about the other exploration plans across the wider portfolio?
Yeah, definitely over to, just reiterating, definitely over to North Isa. Our friends at Glencore are very focused, it appears, on zinc. So we've had a chat to them about Tulloch and the models that we're going to work on there. We've got a nice working relationship with the exploration team up there, led by Trevor Shaw, and they're very open. And as I said, they're willing us on here, because if we have a nice a nice big discovery at Cloncurry, everyone's a winner. We talk to the, clearly we've got great relations, I think, with pretty much every landowner we deal with through that area. The Mitakootie and the Kalkadoon, they're great. I was in the mayor's office on Monday, and he's going, this would be fantastic for the town and for the area, and it'd give it that lift. It'll be great for a lot of things up there, and including things like the Copper String project, which the Queensland government's, I think, getting going now. So a discovery there would be great. But on the other permits within the CJV, which I don't have time to talk on, we see other prospects and projects which Glencore's touched, way too small for them, but really in our wheelhouse size-wise as a junior. And we see a lot of stuff that Ian was talking about, because we've got some permits up around those guys, more in the Western Succession over towards Isa. We see one over there which we'd really like to get stuck into as well, and we might actually get there this season, depending on time. But if we hit something big at Cloncurry, I suspect we'll be kept pretty busy there for a while.
Just talk us through the ownership structure for Mongoose Deeps and the target to be drilled. How much will the company own if the drill is successful?
So roughly 20% odd sits on the Carpentaria joint venture ground, which we're earning into. 80% sits on the 100% owned permit. So I think, and a little bit sits over on True North as well. So everyone gets a little bite of the cherry there. If this comes in, clearly the stakeholders in Renegade will be happy, but I think everyone will be happy. So that's what we're about. We want everyone up in our region to have success, or at least one of us to have some success somewhere. I don't care who it is, because we'll be able to keep funding these activities because it is so fertile. Quoting Ian again, wherever we look, we find copper. That's a problem. It's not like WA where if you see a little bit of outcrop, look here. Sometimes it's a problem, and we've had similar issues at Mongoose. We went, crikey, how did we get that? But we follow up and we don't get that, but then we move along and then we pick it up again. So it's not straightforward, but there's so much copper through there, and I think it's still not well understood by all of the geology teams out there. So it's a big learning curve. It's going to take money, but I think as a district, I think it's one of the best areas in the world to be.
One of the best areas in the world to be. A collegiate approach, willing success, not just for yourself and your shareholders, but those around you. As you say, anyone getting success unlocks value for everybody else and a greater understanding of the mineralised zones they're working through. So we wish you every success. We look forward to following the company with interest. Strong news flow, high impact drilling, things shareholders love. You've caught the market attention, and clearly attention that is well deserved, and will follow the company as it continues its exploration plans. Rob, thanks for your time.
Thanks very much. Thanks for listening.